Hello, fictional. Welcome to the crossover what ifs. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Naruto Uzumaki stood at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the chaotic swirl of colors before him. The once clear sky of the elemental nations had torn apart, revealing a rift that pulsed with dark energy. This wasn't like any technique he had ever encountered, not even the powers of the Otsutsuki clan could match the sheer wrongness emanating from the tear. Hashirama, Naruto muttered under his breath. What the hell is that? The nine-tailed fox growled in response, its deep voice reverberating in Naruto's mind. I've never felt anything like it, Naruto. But whatever it is, it's dangerous. We should get the hell away from here. Naruto's instinct was to agree, but he couldn't leave without understanding what this rift was. He had spent his life fighting to protect his world, and now it seemed the world itself was cracking apart. Without hesitation, he leaped from the cliff toward the rift, hoping to get a better look and maybe even close it before any damage was done. As he approached, the energy from the rift intensified, pulling him closer. Before Naruto could react, the force overwhelmed him, yanking him through the swirling vortex. His vision went dark as he felt himself being dragged through space and time. When Naruto finally regained consciousness, the first thing he noticed was how different everything smelled. The scent of the air was clean but foreign. He sat up, groaning as his body protested. Where am I? He murmured, looking around. The world was nothing like the elemental nations. Tall buildings loomed in the distance, their architecture sleek and modern. Strange symbols and statues of mythological beings adorned the area. Naruto could feel the odd mix of energies all around him, neither chakra nor anything familiar. It was unsettling. Before he could investigate further, a sharp voice cut through the air. Identify yourself. Naruto spun around to see two figures approaching rapidly. They were dressed in strange white uniforms adorned with crosses, and both were armed with swords. One had short blue hair and a confident look on her face, while the other had a gentle demeanor with long brown hair tied into a braid. Who are you? Naruto demanded, taking a defensive stance. The blue-haired woman narrowed her eyes. You're in the presence of Xenovia Quarta, a warrior of the church. Answer my question or face the consequences. The other woman, Irina Shidu, stepped forward. Wait, Xenovia, maybe he's not an enemy. His energy feels different. Xenovia hesitated but kept her sword ready. Naruto, sensing their unease, relaxed his stance but kept his guard up. I don't know where I am or how I got here, he admitted. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I came through some kind of rift. Irina gasped. A rift? Could it be a dimensional tear? She glanced at Xenovia, who lowered her sword slightly. Before they could discuss further, a powerful presence descended upon them. Naruto's senses flared as a dark figure appeared from the sky, wings spread wide. A fallen angel, with jet black wings and a wicked grin, landed between them. Well, what do we have here? The fallen angel sneered. A stray ninja, lost in our world. You'll fetch a high price. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Not gonna happen. Xenovia and Irina readied their swords, but Naruto was already moving. In a flash, he appeared before the fallen angel, his fist glowing with chakra. Rasengan. He shouted, slamming the spinning sphere into the enemy's chest. The force sent the fallen angel flying backward, crashing into the nearby trees. Xenovia and Irina exchanged shocked glances. What was that? Xenovia asked, awed by the sheer power Naruto had displayed. Naruto straightened, brushing off his hands. Just a little trick. The fallen angel groaned as it struggled to get back on its feet. You'll regret this, ninja, this is only the beginning. Before Naruto could respond, the fallen angel vanished, disappearing in a burst of black energy. Irina stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. That was amazing. You're incredibly strong. But who are you really, and where did you come from? Naruto sighed, running a hand through his hair. Like I said, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I was in my world, and some kind of rift appeared. Next thing I knew, I was here, wherever here is. Xenovia sheathed her sword, her expression softening slightly. You're in the human world, but more specifically, in a town governed by devils. Naruto blinked. Devils? As in like demons? Irina nodded. Yes, but it's complicated. We're members of the church, sworn to fight against fallen angels and protect humanity. If you've been brought here by a dimensional tear, we need to bring you to someone who can help, someone who understands these kinds of phenomena. Xenovia stepped closer, her piercing gaze locking onto Naruto. But before that, we need to know if we can trust you. Naruto gave her a confident grin. I'm here to help, not cause trouble. You can trust me. The blue-haired warrior remained silent for a moment before nodding. Alright, Naruto Uzumaki, come with us. We'll introduce you to the people who are on this world. And maybe, together, we can figure out what brought you here. As they set off toward the city, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a wild new turn. New allies, new enemies, and an entirely new world. He had no idea what was coming, but he was ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. The trip into the city was mostly silent, though Naruto could feel the tension radiating from both Xenovia and Irina. They walked with purpose, their weapons at the ready, as if expecting an attack at any moment. Naruto, used to the dangers of his world, remained calm but alert. This new world seemed peaceful on the surface, but beneath the calm exterior, he could sense an unusual energy. Is it always this quiet? Naruto asked, breaking the silence. His gaze wandered over the buildings, which looked strangely modern compared to the hidden villages of his home. Irina chuckled softly. Not always. This part of the city is protected by Rias Gremory, a high-ranking devil. So, we don't get much trouble around here, at least, not from the usual threats. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Devils protecting humans. Sounds complicated. It is, Xenovia said, her tone blunt. But it's how this world works. Devils, angels, and fallen angels all fight for power, and we, the warriors of the church, maintain balance by protecting humans from being caught in the crossfire. Naruto nodded slowly, processing the information. Sounds like a lot of responsibility. Guess it's not too different from my world, though. Protecting people is what I do best. Xenovia glanced at him, her expression softening just a little. We'll see about that. The trio continued walking until they reached a large mansion at the edge of the city. Naruto stopped, gazing up at the imposing structure with curiosity. It wasn't anything like the Hokage mansion, but it definitely had an air of authority. This is the Gremory residence, Irina said. Rias Gremory and her peerage live here. They're devils, but they're on our side. Naruto blinked. On our side? You trust devils that much? Irina smiled. It's complicated, but we've fought alongside them before. Rias and her team are good people, despite what you might think. Naruto shrugged. I'll take your word for it. Before they could enter, the large doors swung open, and a striking figure stepped out to greet them. Rias Gremory, with her long crimson hair and commanding presence, smiled warmly as she approached. Behind her stood a few more people, all with a powerful aura. Xenovia, Irina, Rias greeted. I see you've brought a guest. Xenovia nodded. This is Naruto Uzumaki. He's not from this world. Rias' eyes widened in surprise, and she examined Naruto with interest. Not from this world. That's unusual, even for us. How did you end up here, Naruto? Naruto explained everything as best he could, the rift being pulled through and his sudden arrival in this strange place. By the time he finished, Rias was deep in thought. A dimensional rift, it could be the work of a higher power or even an enemy trying to manipulate the balance between realms, she mused. We'll need to investigate this further. Naruto crossed his arms. You mentioned higher powers. Are you saying someone might have done this on purpose? Rias nodded. It's possible. This world is constantly at war between devils, angels, and fallen angels. If someone with the right knowledge and power wanted to destabilize things, pulling someone like you into this world could be part of a bigger plan. Naruto frowned. Great. More enemies to deal with. Don't worry, Irina said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone in this. We'll help you figure it out. Before they could discuss further, the air around them grew heavy, and Naruto's senses went on high alert. He instinctively reached for his kunai, his eyes narrowing as the strange energy intensified. Rias frowned, turning toward the direction of the disturbance. We've got company. The dark figure emerged from the shadows, flanked by several others with black wings and malevolent smiles. Fallen angels. Naruto recognized them from his earlier encounter, but this time, there were more of them, and their leader exuded a much more dangerous aura. Looks like we found our missing ninja, the leader sneered, his black wings unfurling. You've caused quite a stir, boy. Naruto stepped forward, ready for a fight. I'm not looking for trouble, but I won't back down if you attack. Xenovia and Irina moved into battle positions, their swords drawn and ready. Rias and her peerage followed suit, the tension in the air growing thick as they prepared for an inevitable clash. The fallen angel leader chuckled darkly. Oh, we're not here to talk. You've disrupted the balance, and we can't have that. Your power will be ours, ninja. Naruto gritted his teeth. I've heard that before. Before the fallen angels could launch their attack, Naruto took the initiative. His hands moved swiftly, forming familiar seals. Shadow clone jutsu. In an instant, multiple clones of Naruto appeared, rushing forward to engage the fallen angels. The battle erupted in a blur of movements, chakra-infused punches, and blade clashes. Xenovia and Irina fought with precision, their holy swords cutting through the darkness, while Rias unleashed waves of demonic energy, holding back the enemy forces. Naruto focused on the leader, who was clearly the most dangerous of the group. The fallen angel moved with blinding speed, but Naruto had faced worse. Dodging the enemy's attacks, Naruto formed a Rasengan in his hand, the spiraling chakra glowing brightly. Take this. Naruto shouted, slamming the Rasengan into the fallen angel's chest. The impact sent the leader flying back, crashing into the ground with a thunderous explosion. The remaining fallen angels, seeing their leader defeated, quickly retreated into the shadows, disappearing as swiftly as they had come. Breathing heavily, Naruto rejoined the group, who had handled the other enemies with ease. "Well, that was fun," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Rias approached him, her expression serious. "This attack proves that someone is targeting you, Naruto. You're a threat to the balance of this world." Naruto crossed his arms. "Yeah, I figured as much. So, what now?" Rias glanced at Xenovia and Irina, then back at Naruto. "We'll need to work together if we're going to figure out who's behind this. Until we know more, you'll stay with us." Naruto nodded. "Fine by me. Just point me at the enemy and I'll take care of the rest." As they returned to the mansion, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. His arrival in this world had set something in motion, and whatever it wasn't going to be easy to stop. The next morning, Naruto woke up in the guest room of the Gremory mansion. The sun filtered through the large windows, casting a warm glow over the ornate room. He stretched and yawned, thinking about the events of the previous day. The fight with the fallen angels still lingered in his mind. Something bigger was happening, and he had a feeling that it wasn't over yet. As he sat up, there was a knock on the door. Before Naruto could respond, Irina peeked her head in, a bright smile on her face. "Good morning, Naruto. You're up early." Naruto grinned. "Yeah, couldn't sleep much. Got a lot on my mind, I guess." Irina stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I get it. It's not every day you get transported to a new world and have to deal with devils, angels, and fallen angels all at once." Naruto chuckled. "Yeah, you could say that. So, what's on the agenda today?" "Well, we've got a mission," Irina said, her tone becoming more serious. "Xenovia and I have been tasked with retrieving a sacred sword that was stolen by a group of fallen angels. They plan to use it to tip the balance of power in their favor." Naruto's eyes lit up. "Sounds like a good fight. Count me in." Irina smiled warmly. "I was hoping you'd say that. Xenovia and I could use the help. These fallen angels are stronger than the ones we fought yesterday, and we don't know how many there are." Naruto stood up, determination gleaming in his eyes. "Don't worry. I've got your back." A few minutes later, Naruto, Xenovia, and Irina were gathered outside the mansion, ready to head out on their mission. Xenovia, ever the stoic warrior, was adjusting the straps on her sword, her face set in a determined expression. Irina, on the other hand, looked excited but focused. "So, this sword," Naruto began as they started walking toward the outskirts of the city. "What makes it so important?" Xenovia glanced at him, her blue eyes hard with resolve. "It's called Durandal. It's a holy sword of immense power, one that can rival Excalibur. If the fallen angels manage to unlock its full potential, they could use it to wage war on both devils and angels alike. It could tip the balance and cause chaos across all realms." Naruto nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Sounds like we need to stop them before that happens." Irina nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. And with you on our side, we stand a better chance. You're stronger than any of us expected, Naruto." Naruto grinned. "Well, I've had my fair share of crazy battles. This won't be any different." As they approached the location where the fallen angels were hiding, the atmosphere grew tense. The area was a dense forest, the trees tall and twisted, casting long shadows across the ground. The air was heavy with a dark energy, making Naruto's senses tingle. "They're close," Xenovia whispered, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "Stay sharp." Naruto nodded, activating his Sage mode to enhance his awareness. He could feel the presence of several enemies up ahead, their malicious intent clear. "There's at least 4 of them," he said quietly. "They're waiting for us." Xenovia unsheathed her sword, the blade gleaming with holy energy. "Let's not keep them waiting, then." The trio moved silently through the trees until they reached a small clearing. Standing in the center were 4 fallen angels, their black wings spread wide and their eyes glowing with malice. One of them held Durandal, its blade pulsing with power. "So, you've come," the leader of the fallen angels sneered. He was tall, with long black hair and a wicked grin. "Did you really think you could take this sword from us?" Xenovia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "Durandal belongs to the church, not to monsters like you." The fallen angel laughed. "And what would you do about it, little warrior? You don't stand a chance against us." Before Xenovia could respond, Naruto stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You talk too much. How about we skip the chit-chat and get to the fight?" The fallen angels sneered, but before they could make a move, Naruto created several shadow clones. Shadow clone jutsu. The clones rushed forward, engaging the fallen angels in battle. Xenovia and Irina followed close behind, their swords flashing as they joined the fray. Xenovia's holy blade clashed with the enemy's weapons, while Irina moved gracefully, dodging and striking with precision. Naruto focused on the leader, who still held Durandal. The fallen angel swung the sword at him, the blade humming with power. Naruto dodged, barely avoiding the strike, but the force of the swing left a deep gash in the ground. "Not bad," Naruto muttered, his hands moving quickly to form seals. "But I'm faster." He gathered chakra in his hand, forming a Rasengan, and lunged at the fallen angel. The leader raised Durandal to block, but Naruto's Rasengan hit with such force that it sent him flying back, crashing into the trees. Xenovia took the opportunity to rush forward, her own sword glowing with holy light. "Now, Naruto." Naruto created another shadow clone, and together they launched a combination attack, slamming the fallen angel from both sides. The force of the impact knocked the sword from his hands, sending it flying through the air. Xenovia caught it, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Durandal is back where it belongs. The remaining fallen angels, seeing their leader defeated, quickly fled into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. The battle was over, and the sword was safe. Breathing heavily, Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow. That was intense. Irina grinned, sheathing her sword. "You did great, Naruto. I don't think we could have done it without you." Xenovia, though less expressive, gave him a nod of approval. "Your strength is impressive. You truly are a warrior." Naruto smiled, scratching the back of his head. "Thanks, but I couldn't have done it without you guys. We make a pretty good team." As they made their way back to the Gremory mansion, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with Xenovia and Irina. They had fought together, trusted each other, and in doing so, had forged a bond. It wasn't just about fighting anymore, it was about friendship. And maybe, just maybe, something more. Naruto stood on the balcony of the Gremory mansion, gazing out over the horizon. The mission to retrieve Durandal had been a success, and the bond between him, Xenovia, and Irina had grown. But something still felt off. He couldn't shake the sense that something darker was looming on the horizon. As he lost himself in thought, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned to see Rossweisse approaching, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she walked toward him with a contemplative look on her face. "Naruto," Rossweisse said softly, stopping beside him. "Mind if I join you?" Naruto smiled, leaning on the railing. "Not at all. What's up?" Rossweisse hesitated, glancing out at the city below. "I've been thinking about what happened yesterday, about how easily you handled those fallen angels. You're really strong, Naruto. Stronger than I thought." Naruto shrugged. "I've had a lot of practice. But you guys aren't weak either. That fight wouldn't have gone as well without Xenovia and Irina." Rossweisse eyed, her expression growing troubled. "That's just it. I've been with the Gremory group for a while now, and I'm still not as strong as I want to be. Everyone else seems to be growing, improving. But I feel like I'm stuck in the same place." Naruto turned to face her, frowning slightly. "What are you talking about? I saw you fight back there. You held your own just fine." Rossweisse shook her head, frustration evident in her eyes. "That's not enough. I'm a Valkyrie. I'm supposed to be a powerful warrior, yet I'm always overshadowed by others. I've always been the weakest in every team I've been a part of." Naruto studied her for a moment, recognizing the self-doubt in her voice. It reminded him of how he used to feel, back when everyone doubted him, back when he was the outcast of his village. "Listen, Rossweisse," Naruto said, his voice firm but gentle. "Strength isn't just about raw power. It's about how you use what you've got and how much you're willing to fight for what's important to you." Rossweisse blinked, looking up at him. "What do you mean?" Naruto smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. "When I was a kid, no one believed in me. I wasn't the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. But I kept pushing forward because I had something I wanted to protect. My friends, my village, they gave me the strength to keep going, even when I thought I couldn't." Rossweisse bit her lip, her silver eyes glistening with uncertainty. "But what if I'm not good enough? What if no matter how hard I try, I'll never be as strong as someone like you?" Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze warm and encouraging. "You're already strong, Rossweisse. You just need to believe in yourself. You've got the heart of a warrior, I can see it. Don't let doubt hold you back." For a moment, Rossweisse stared at him, her expression softening as she absorbed his words. Slowly, a small smile crept onto her face. "Thanks, Naruto. I don't hear that very often." Naruto grinned. "Well, you're hearing it now. And if you ever need someone to train with, I'm always around. I could teach you a few tricks." Rossweisse's smile grew wider, her spirits lifting. "I might just take you up on that offer." Before the conversation could go any further, Xenovia appeared at the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. "Naruto, Rossweisse," she called out. "We've just received word from Rias. There's another mission." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Another mission? So soon?" Xenovia nodded. "It seems like the fallen angels aren't giving up. They've regrouped and are planning an attack on a nearby town. Rias wants us to head there immediately." Rossweisse straightened, her resolve hardening. "I'm coming with you this time. I won't sit this one out." Naruto grinned at her enthusiasm. "That's the spirit. Together, the three of them joined Irina and Rias' group, gathering in the grand hall of the mansion. The atmosphere was tense, but focused. Rias stood at the front, her crimson hair flowing as she addressed the group. "The fallen angels have been spotted near a small town just outside our territory," Rias explained. "They're planning to attack, and we can't let them gain any more ground. Naruto, Xenovia, Irina, Rossweisse, you four will be on the front line. I'll provide support from behind with the rest of the team." Naruto nodded. "Got it. We'll take care of them." The team set out quickly, moving through the town and into the forest. The sense of urgency was palpable, and Naruto could feel the familiar rush of adrenaline as they prepared for battle. Beside him, Xenovia and Irina were calm and focused, their swords at the ready. Rossweisse, though more serious than before, carried a new sense of determination in her stance. As they reached the outskirts of the town, they saw the fallen angels waiting. This time, there were more of them, and their leader looked even more powerful than the last. "Looks like they brought backup," Naruto muttered, scanning the enemies. Rossweisse stepped forward, her magical energy flaring to life. "It doesn't matter. We'll stop them." Without hesitation, the battle began. Xenovia and Irina charged forward, their swords flashing as they clashed with the fallen angels. Naruto summoned his shadow clones, engaging the enemy with his usual reckless determination. Rossweisse, standing a bit behind, focused her energy into a powerful magical attack, firing a series of destructive blasts at the fallen angels. One of the fallen angels, a particularly large and menacing figure, charged at Rossweisse. She hesitated for a split second, but then Naruto's voice echoed in her mind. "You just need to believe in yourself." With a determined shout, Rossweisse unleashed a barrier to block the attack, then countered with a burst of magic that sent the fallen angel crashing into the ground. Naruto, seeing her victory, gave her a thumbs up. "Nice one, Rossweisse." The battle raged on for several more minutes, but with Naruto and the others working together, the fallen angels were quickly overwhelmed. The leader, realizing his defeat, fled with the few remaining members of his group, disappearing into the shadows once more. As the dust settled, Naruto looked around, breathing heavily but smiling. "We did it." Xenovia and Irina sheathed their swords, nodding in satisfaction. Rossweisse, though exhausted, stood tall, and newfound confidence radiating from her. "I did it," she whispered to herself, a small smile tugging at her lips. Naruto walked over to her, clapping her on the shoulder. "Told you you were strong. You just had to believe it." Rossweisse blushed slightly but smiled back. "Thanks, Naruto. I couldn't have done it without you." As they returned to the mansion, Naruto couldn't help but feel proud of Rossweisse's growth. She had found her resolve, and now, she was stronger than ever. Together, they were becoming an unstoppable team, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The return to the Gremory mansion was quiet, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. The mission had been a success, but there was a new unspoken tension between Naruto and the girls. Over the past few days, Naruto had grown closer to Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse, but the deepening bond between them was starting to complicate things in unexpected ways. Naruto was aware of the way Xenovia's gaze lingered on him during training, how Irina always found reasons to sit next to him at meals, and how Rossweisse's usual shyness seemed to vanish whenever they were alone. He had faced countless enemies in his life, from rogue ninjas to gods, but this was different. It wasn't something he could solve with a Rasengan. As the group settled back into the mansion, Naruto made his way to the training grounds, hoping to clear his mind. He had grown accustomed to the strange mix of energies in this world, but the situation with the girls left him feeling uncertain. He was used to being the underdog, the one fighting for acknowledgement. But now, with three incredible women showing interest in him, he wasn't sure how to handle it. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What the hell am I supposed to do?" As if on cue, Xenovia appeared from the entrance of the training grounds, her sword resting casually on her shoulder. "Naruto, I was hoping I'd find you here." Naruto looked up, offering her a lopsided grin. "What's up, Xenovia? You here to train?" Xenovia approached him, her usual confident demeanor tempered by something softer. "Not exactly. I wanted to talk to you." Naruto blinked, sensing the shift in her tone. "Oh? What's on your mind?" Xenovia hesitated for a moment, her blue eyes locking onto his. "I've been thinking a lot since we fought together. About you. You're different from anyone I've ever met, Naruto. You're strong, not just in battle, but in how you carry yourself, how you care about everyone." Naruto scratched the back of his head, unsure of where this was going. Thanks. I mean, I just try to do my best, you know." Xenovia stepped closer, her gaze intense. "It's more than that. I've never felt this way about anyone before, but I think I like you, Naruto. And I don't mean just as a friend or teammate." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Xenovia to be so direct. "Xenovia, I..." Before he could respond, another voice interrupted them. "You're not the only one who feels that way," Irina's voice came from behind. She stepped into the training grounds, her expression a mix of determination and vulnerability. "Naruto, I've been by your side ever since you came here and I've seen the kind of person you are. You're someone who always puts others first, someone who fights for what's right. I've fallen for you too." Naruto's eyes widened as he looked between the two girls. This was quickly becoming a situation he hadn't anticipated. "Wait, Irina, And then, as if fate had a cruel sense of humor, Rossweisse appeared at the entrance, her face flushed. She had clearly overheard the conversation, and her usual calm composure was nowhere to be seen. I didn't plan to say anything," Rossweisse began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I can't stay quiet anymore. Naruto, you've been so kind to me, and you've helped me believe in myself. I've never felt this way about anyone before, but I think I love you." Naruto stared at the three women, his mind spinning. Xenovia, Irina, and now Rossweisse. How had things gotten so complicated? He took a deep breath, trying to collect his thoughts. "Listen, all of you, I had no idea you felt this way. I care about each of you a lot, but I don't know what to say right now. This is a lot to take in." Xenovia, ever the warrior, stepped forward, her expression resolute. "You don't have to decide right now. I just wanted you to know how I feel. But I'm not going to back down. If Irina and Rossweisse feel the same way, then I'll fight for you." Irina nodded, her determination matching Zenovia's. "I won't back down either. I care about you too much to just let this go." Rossweisse, though visibly nervous, stood her ground. I feel the same. I won't give up either." Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of their words. "You guys, I don't want to hurt any of you. I don't know how to handle this." Xenovia placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm but reassuring. "You don't have to handle it alone. We'll figure it out together. But just know that my feelings for you aren't going to change." Irina smiled softly. "Same here, Naruto. No matter what happens, I'll always be by your side." Rossweisse nodded, her cheeks pink but her eyes full of resolve. "Me too. I won't give up on you." Naruto stood there, feeling the weight of their affections. He had always fought for others, always put his friends and his village before himself. But this was a new kind of battle, one of the heart. And it wasn't something he could fight his way out of. For the first time in a long while, Naruto didn't know what to do. He had fought gods and monsters, but three incredible women, all of whom he cared about, were now fighting for his heart. As he stood there, caught between Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse, Naruto realized that this wasn't a fight he could win on his own. He would need time, and he would need to figure out how to navigate this complex web of emotions without hurting anyone. And as the sun began to set over the Gremory mansion, Naruto couldn't help but wonder if he could truly find a way to make everyone happy, including himself. The days following the tense confrontation with Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse were a whirlwind for Naruto. He found himself constantly wrestling with his feelings, unsure of how to move forward. As he trained, he couldn't help but replay the moments in the training grounds over and over again in his mind. The affection from the three women was real, and it weighed heavily on him, making every interaction with them feel more charged than ever before. But amidst the personal turmoil, the world outside did not wait. Trouble was brewing, and Naruto could feel it. The fallen angels had gone quiet since their defeat in the forest, but the air was thick with tension. It felt like the calm before a storm. One evening, as the group gathered for dinner in the grand dining hall of the Gremory mansion, Naruto noticed that Rias seemed unusually quiet. Normally confident and poised, tonight she wore a serious expression, her crimson eyes reflecting a sense of worry that she was clearly trying to keep hidden from the rest of the group. "What's going on, Rias?" Naruto asked, breaking the silence. Rias looked up from her meal, her gaze briefly meeting his before shifting to the others. "We've received some troubling news," she began. "There's been activity from a powerful enemy. Someone who has been watching us from the shadows for a while now." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "What kind of enemy?" Rias sighed. "We don't know the full details yet, but what we do know is that this enemy is dangerous. They've been gathering power and allies from both the fallen angels and other rogue factions. It seems they've been planning something ever since you arrived, Naruto." Naruto frowned, a feeling of dread settling in his stomach. "You think this is about me?" "It's possible," Rias said. "Your presence here is unique, and you're a wild card in the power struggles between the factions. Whoever this enemy is, they may see you as a threat or an opportunity." Xenovia, sitting next to Naruto, placed a hand on the table, her expression serious. "If they're targeting Naruto, then we need to be ready. We can't let them get the upper hand." Irina nodded in agreement. "Exactly. We've already faced smaller attacks from fallen angels. If this enemy is as powerful as Rias says, we'll need to stay alert." Rossweisse, who had been quiet for most of the meal, finally spoke up. "I've been researching some of the magical signatures we've encountered during our fights, and there's a pattern. Whoever this enemy is, they're drawing power from multiple sources, forbidden sources. It's possible they're trying to break the balance between realms. Naruto clenched his fists. Whoever they are, we'll stop them. I'm not going to let anyone use me or hurt my friends. Rias nodded, her expression resolute. We'll need to gather more information before we make our move. But in the meantime, everyone needs to be on high alert. This enemy could strike at any time. As the group finished dinner and began to disperse, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. Something was coming, something big, and it was aimed directly at him. Later that night, Naruto found himself standing outside on the mansion's balcony, staring up at the starry sky. The air was cool, and the breeze carried with it the faint sounds of the bustling city below. Despite the beauty of the night, Naruto's mind was racing, his thoughts consumed by the looming threat and the unresolved feelings between him and the girls. As he stood there, deep in thought, he heard footsteps approaching. He turned to see Xenovia walking toward him, her usual confident demeanor softened by the moonlight. "Naruto," Xenovia said quietly, joining him at the balcony's edge. "Are you okay?" Naruto shrugged, leaning against the railing. "I don't know. I feel like things are spinning out of control. First, everything with you, Irina and Rossweisse, and now this enemy that's after me. It's a lot to take in." Xenovia nodded, her gaze distant as she looked out over the horizon. "I understand. Things have been complicated lately, for all of us. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm with you. We all are." Naruto smiled slightly, appreciating her words. "Thanks, Xenovia. That means a lot." For a moment, there was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, in a way. But before the moment could last, the peaceful night was shattered by the sudden sensation of overwhelming power. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he immediately sensed a dark, malicious energy rapidly approaching the mansion. "Do you feel that?" Naruto asked, his voice tense. Xenovia nodded, her hand already on the hilt of her sword. "Yes. It's close." Without another word, they both bolted toward the entrance of the mansion, where the rest of the group was already gathering. Rias, Irina, Rossweisse, and the others stood ready, their expressions grim. "It's him," Rias said, her voice laced with urgency. "The enemy. He's here." As if on cue, a dark figure appeared in the sky above the mansion, his presence alone causing the air to grow thick with tension. His long black cloak billowed in the wind, and his piercing red eyes seemed to glow with malevolence. "Ah, so this is the famous Naruto Uzumaki," the figure said, his voice dripping with amusement. "I've heard so much about you." Naruto stepped forward, his hands already forming the familiar seals for his shadow clones. "Who the hell are you?" The figure chuckled. "Names are meaningless to beings like us. But if you must call me something, you may call me Azazel. I am the one who will tip the scales of power with your help, of course." Naruto scowled. "I don't know what you're planning, but I'm not helping you with anything." Azazel's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Oh, you'll change your mind soon enough. You see, I've been watching you, Naruto. Your power is something this world has never seen before, and I intend to use it to reshape reality as I see fit." Rias stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. "We won't let you lay a hand on him, Azazel." Azazel's laughter echoed through the night. "You think you can stop me? How amusing." Before anyone could react, Azazel raised his hand, and a massive surge of dark energy shot toward the mansion. Naruto and the others barely had time to brace themselves before the attack collided with the ground, sending shockwaves through the entire area. "Get ready," Naruto shouted, summoning his chakra as he prepared for the fight of his life. The ground shook violently beneath Naruto's feet as Azazel's attack struck the mansion's front courtyard. Debris scattered in all directions, and the sky above them seemed to darken with the sheer force of his power. But despite the chaos, Naruto's mind was clear this was a battle he could not afford to lose. He quickly formed the familiar hand seals. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In an instant, multiple copies of Naruto appeared, each one preparing for battle alongside the rest of the group. Rias stepped forward, her red aura flaring to life. "Azazel, this ends here. You won't harm Naruto or anyone else in this world." Azazel hovered in the air, his wings spread wide, his expression one of amusement. "You're brave, Rias Gremory, but bravery alone won't be enough to stop me." Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse moved into position, standing beside Naruto. Their swords were drawn, and their eyes were filled with determination. This was more than just a fight for survival, it was a fight to protect the bonds they had formed. "Naruto," Xenovia said, her voice firm. "We're with you. No matter what happens." Naruto nodded, grateful for their support. "Right. Let's show this guy what we're made of." With that, the battle erupted. Azazel unleashed another wave of dark energy, and Naruto's clones rushed forward, charging straight into the fray. Xenovia and Irina leaped into action, their swords glowing with holy energy as they clashed with the fallen angel's dark magic. Rossweisse, standing slightly behind, summoned powerful magical barriers to protect them from the incoming attacks. Naruto darted through the chaos, his fists glowing with chakra as he engaged Azazel directly. "Rasengan," he shouted, driving the spiraling ball of energy toward Azazel's chest. But Azazel was faster than Naruto expected. With a flick of his wrist, he deflected the attack, sending Naruto crashing into the ground. "Is that the best you can do?" Azazel taunted, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight. Naruto gritted his teeth, quickly pulling himself back to his feet. He could feel the weight of the battle bearing down on him, but he refused to give up. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. As the battle raged on, Xenovia and Irina fought side by side, their teamwork seamless. They had trained together for so long that their movements were in perfect sync, their swords cutting through Azazel's dark minions with ease. But even with their strength, Azazel's power seemed limitless. Rossweisse stood her ground, casting a powerful spell that sent a burst of magical energy toward Azazel. "Take this." The attack hit Azazel squarely, but the fallen angel merely laughed, brushing off the magic like it was nothing. "You'll need more than that to defeat me, little Valkyrie." Naruto, seeing his friend struggling, felt a surge of determination rise within him. He couldn't let them face this alone. Drawing upon the power of the nine tails, he let Kurama's chakra flood his body, his aura flaring into bright orange flames. "You're not going to hurt my friends," Naruto shouted, his voice echoing with the power of the beast inside him. Azazel's eyes widened slightly as Naruto charged at him once more, his speed and strength amplified by Kurama's chakra. The two clashed in midair, their powers colliding in a brilliant explosion of energy. But this time, Naruto had the advantage. With Kurama's power fueling him, he was able to keep up with Azazel's attacks, countering each blow with increasing ferocity. The battle became a blur of movements, with Naruto refusing to give an inch. Xenovia and Irina took the opportunity to flank Azazel, striking from both sides with their holy swords. The combined force of their attacks drove Azazel back, forcing him to retreat momentarily. "You're stronger than I expected," Azazel admitted, his voice laced with frustration. "But strength alone won't be enough to defeat me." Rossweisse stepped forward, her eyes glowing with determination. "You underestimate us. It's not just strength, it's the bonds we share." Naruto glanced at her, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. It wasn't just about power. It was about the trust and friendship they had built. Together, they were stronger than any one person could ever be. "Let's finish this," Naruto said, his voice filled with resolve. "Together." Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse nodded, their expressions mirroring his determination. They formed a circle around Azazel, each of them gathering their energy for one final attack. Azazel, sensing the shift in the battle, narrowed his eyes. "Fools. You think you can defeat me with your weak bonds?" But Naruto wasn't listening. He could feel the strength of his friends beside him, their combined energy fueling his own. With a deep breath, he focused all of his chakra into his next attack. "Now!" Naruto shouted. Xenovia and Irina lunged forward, their swords glowing with holy energy as they slashed at Azazel from opposite sides. At the same moment, Rossweisse unleashed a powerful magical blast, striking him from above. And finally, Naruto charged in with his Rasengan, his chakra swirling with Kurama's power. The combined force of their attacks hit Azazel all at once, overwhelming him in a burst of light and energy. For a moment, the entire battlefield was consumed by the brilliance of their power, the air crackling with the intensity of the collision. When the light finally faded, Azazel stood in the center of the destruction, his body bruised and battered, but still standing. He coughed, blood dripping from his mouth, but there was a dark smile on his face. You actually managed to hurt me," Azazel said, his voice weak but filled with a strange amusement. "I didn't expect that." Naruto stood tall, breathing heavily, but his eyes were filled with determination. "We're not done yet." Azazel's smile faltered, and for the first time, there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You're stronger than I thought. But this isn't over. Not yet." But the final burst of dark energy, Azazel vanished, disappearing into the shadows. The battlefield was left in silence, the only sound the heavy breathing of Naruto and his friends. Naruto fell to one knee, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse gathered around him, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You were amazing, Naruto," Irina said, smiling softly. "We couldn't have done it without you," Xenovia added, her voice filled with admiration. Rossweisse knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We did it together." Naruto looked up at his friends, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. They had faced one of the most dangerous enemies they had ever encountered, and they had won not because of their individual strength, but because of the bonds they shared. And as they stood together, victorious but weary, Naruto knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team, as friends, and maybe something more. The next few days passed in a blur of recovery and planning. After the intense battle with Azazel, Naruto and the rest of the Gremory team knew that the danger was far from over. Azazel had retreated, but his parting words echoed in their minds, this isn't over. Everyone was on high alert, knowing that the fallen angels were likely regrouping for an even larger assault. Naruto spent most of his time training in the courtyard, pushing himself harder than ever before. He knew that Azazel was still out there, plotting something, and he couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. But it wasn't just his own strength that he was focused on, it was the bond he shared with Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse. That bond had been their greatest weapon in the last battle, and it would be their greatest weapon in the battles to come. One afternoon, as Naruto finished his training session, he saw Irina approaching with a worried expression. "Naruto," she called out, her voice tense. "We've just received word from the church. The fallen angels are preparing for an attack, a big one." Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow, his expression hardening. "Where?" Irina glanced around before stepping closer, lowering her voice. "They're targeting the church's stronghold in the next town over. The sacred artifacts stored there are powerful. If Azazel gets his hands on them, he could tip the balance even further in his favor." Naruto's jaw tightened. "Then we can't let that happen. We need to stop them." Irina nodded. "Rias is already gathering the rest of the team. We'll need to leave immediately." Naruto quickly followed Irina to the main hall of the mansion, where the rest of the group was already assembled. Rias stood at the head of the room, her usual calm demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency. "Everyone," Rias began, her voice steady but serious. "We've received confirmation that Azazel and his forces are preparing for an assault on the church's stronghold. The artifacts stored there are too dangerous to fall into enemy hands. Our mission is to defend the stronghold at all costs." Xenovia, standing beside Rias, stepped forward. "The church has already sent reinforcements, but they won't be enough. We'll be the first line of defense." Naruto's heart raced as he glanced at the faces of his friends. They had faced Azazel once, but this time, the stakes were even higher. He knew that they would need to work together more than ever to protect the stronghold. "I'll fight with everything I've got," Naruto said, his voice filled with resolve. "We won't let Azazel win." Rossweisse, standing beside him, placed a hand on his arm. "We're with you, Naruto. We'll protect the stronghold together." Rias nodded, her gaze sweeping over the group. "Prepare yourselves. This battle will be unlike any we've faced before." The journey to the church's stronghold was tense. As the group traveled through the forest, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The air was thick with the same oppressive energy that had surrounded Azazel during their last battle. Something was coming and it wasn't going to be easy. As they reached the outskirts of the stronghold, the tension only grew. The stronghold itself was a massive ancient structure, its towering stone walls a testament to the power of the church. But even the strongest walls could fall, and Naruto knew that Azazel's forces would be relentless. "They're close," Xenovia said, her eyes scanning the horizon. "I can feel it." Irina nodded, gripping her sword tightly. "We need to stay sharp. They could attack at any moment." Just as the words left her mouth, a dark shadow passed over the group. Naruto looked up, his eyes widening as he saw a massive swarm of fallen angels descending from the sky. At their head was Azazel, his black wings spread wide, his eyes gleaming with malice. "There you are," Azazel called down, his voice carrying through the air. "I was hoping you'd show up." Naruto stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We're not letting you take anything from this place, Azazel." Azazel smirked. "We'll see about that." With a wave of his hand, the fallen angels surged forward, their dark magic crackling in the air as they descended upon the stronghold. The battle began in an instant, with the Gremory team rushing to meet the attack. Xenovia and Irina charged into the fray, their swords glowing with holy energy as they clashed with the fallen angels. Rossweisse, standing back slightly, summoned powerful magical barriers to shield the stronghold from the onslaught. Naruto leaped into action, summoning his shadow clones to help fend off the attackers. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with the sky darkening as waves of energy collided. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Naruto and his friends fought with everything they had, pushing back the fallen angels with sheer determination and teamwork. But Azazel, watching from above, wasn't content to let them hold the line. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a powerful blast of dark energy hurtling toward the stronghold, aiming directly for the sacred artifacts inside. "Not so fast," Naruto shouted, leaping into the air to intercept the attack. He formed a Rasengan in his hand, the spiraling chakra glowing brightly as he slammed it into Azazel's attack. The two forces collided, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Azazel's eyes gleamed with amusement as he descended toward Naruto. "Impressive. But how long can you keep this up?" Naruto gritted his teeth, his chakra flaring as he prepared for another strike. "Long enough to stop you." Before Azazel could respond, Xenovia and Irina appeared at Naruto's side, their swords ready. "We're in this together," Xenovia said, her voice steady. "You're not fighting alone." Naruto smiled, feeling the strength of their bond as they stood together against the overwhelming odds. "Right. Let's take him down." The three of them charged at Azazel, their combined power creating a devastating force that sent the fallen angel reeling. Rossweisse, from the ground, unleashed a barrage of magical attacks, her precision and timing perfect as she supported them from afar. Despite Azazel's power, Naruto and his friends fought with a determination that couldn't be broken. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. Together, they were unstoppable. As the battle raged on, the fallen angels began to falter, their numbers thinning as Naruto and the others pushed them back. Azazel, realizing that his forces were losing ground, let out a roar of frustration. "This isn't over." Azazel shouted, his wings flaring as he prepared to retreat. "I'll be back, and next time, you won't be so lucky." With that, he vanished into the sky, his remaining forces retreating with him. The battlefield fell silent as the last of the fallen angels disappeared. Naruto stood in the center of the courtyard, breathing heavily but victorious. They had defended the stronghold, and the sacred artifacts were safe. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse gathered around him, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You did it, Naruto," Irina said, smiling despite her fatigue. "We all did." Naruto smiled back, his heart swelling with pride. "Yeah. We make a pretty good team, don't we?" Rossweisse nodded, her voice soft but filled with warmth. "Together, we're unstoppable." As they stood there, victorious but weary, Naruto knew that the battle wasn't over. Azazel would return, and the next time, the stakes would be even higher. But for now, they had won and they had done it together. The aftermath of the battle left Naruto and the others exhausted but victorious. They had defended the church's stronghold from Azazel's forces, and for now, the fallen angels had retreated. However, the weight of what had just occurred lingered in the air as they returned to the Gremory mansion, each of them silently contemplating the next steps in the escalating conflict. As night fell, the mansion was unusually quiet. Most of the team had retreated to their rooms to rest and recover, but Naruto couldn't sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of the battle, Azazel's ominous promise of return, and most of all, the complicated situation he found himself in with Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse. The feelings of all three girls weighed heavily on his heart. Each of them had confessed their affection for him, and Naruto, for the first time in his life, was caught in an emotional storm he didn't know how to navigate. He cared deeply for all of them, but the thought of choosing between them or worse, hurting any of them was something he couldn't bear. He found himself wandering the halls of the mansion, hoping that some fresh air might clear his head. As he stepped out onto the balcony, the cool breeze helped calm his racing thoughts, if only for a moment. "Can't sleep either." Naruto turned to see Xenovia standing at the doorway, her usual confident expression softened in the pale moonlight. She walked over to him, leaning on the balcony railing beside him. "I guess not," Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "There's a lot going on in my head right now." Xenovia nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I get it. The battle, Azazel and everything else." She paused before turning to face him, her expression more serious. "Naruto, I meant what I said before. I care about you more than just as a friend or teammate. I've never been one to hesitate, so I'll say it again. I love you." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. Hearing her say it so directly brought all his feelings back to the surface. But before he could respond, another voice interrupted them. "I thought I might find you here." Naruto and Xenovia turned to see Irina walking toward them, her expression a mix of determination and vulnerability. She joined them on the balcony, standing on the other side of Naruto. "Naruto, I know this is complicated, but I need to be honest with you too," Irina began, her voice soft but steady. "I've known you long enough to see what kind of person you are. You always put others first, and that's why I fell in love with you." Naruto stared at the two girls, feeling the pressure mounting. "Irina, I..." But once again, before he could finish, another familiar voice joined the conversation. "Naruto." Rossweisse appeared, her face flushed with a mix of emotions. She had overheard the conversation, and though she was clearly nervous, she stood her ground. "I know I've always been quiet about my feelings," Rossweisse said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I care about you too. You helped me believe in myself when I was feeling weak. You showed me that I'm stronger than I thought. And I love you for that." Naruto felt like the world was spinning. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse, all three of them stood before him, each confessing their love, and each waiting for his answer. It wasn't that he didn't care for them, he did, deeply. But the thought of making a choice was tearing him apart. He took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. I don't know what to say," Naruto began, his voice laced with uncertainty. "I care about all of you, and I don't want to hurt any of you. But I don't know how to choose." Xenovia crossed her arms, her usual boldness shining through. "You don't have to decide right now, Naruto. But just know that I'm not backing down. My feelings for you aren't going to change." Irina, though a bit more reserved, smiled softly. "I feel the same way. I won't give up, no matter what happens." Rossweisse blushed, but there was a quiet determination in her voice. Me too. I can't pretend that this is easy, but I'm not going to give up on my feelings. Naruto was silent for a moment, his mind racing as he tried to process everything. He had always been someone who fought for his friends, who protected those he cared about. But this was different. This was about his heart and he didn't have a jutsu to solve it. I don't want to make a decision that hurts anyone, Naruto said finally, his voice heavy with emotion. Xenovia placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression softening. Naruto, no matter what happens, we're still your friends. We'll figure this out together. Irina nodded. We've fought through worse situations. We can handle this too. Rossweisse smiled gently, her eyes filled with warmth. We'll be okay. Just take your time. Naruto let out a long breath, feeling a mixture of relief and confusion. He still didn't have all the answers, but at least he knew that the girls were willing to give him the time he needed. As the three of them stood there with him, side by side, Naruto realized that this wasn't just about romance. It was about the deep bonds they had formed, bonds that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, Naruto knew he couldn't make a decision. But he also knew that no matter what, the connection they all shared was something powerful, something that would help them face whatever the future held. And as the night stretched on, the weight on Naruto's heart felt a little lighter. The confusion was still there, but so was the love and support of his friends. Together, they would figure out a way forward. The days following Naruto's hero heart with Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse were filled with a strange mix of tension and camaraderie. Despite the unresolved feelings between them, there was an unspoken agreement to put their emotions aside for the time being. The looming threat of Azazel and his fallen angel army demanded their full attention, and everyone knew that the next battle would be the most dangerous yet. Rias had called an emergency meeting in the grand hall of the mansion. The atmosphere was heavy, the seriousness of the situation evident on everyone's faces. As Naruto, Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse entered the hall, they were greeted by the rest of the Gremory team, who were already deep in discussion. Rias stood at the head of the table, her crimson hair flowing as she addressed the group. We've received confirmation from our scouts. Azazel has gathered his forces, and they're preparing for a full-scale attack on the city. His goal is to seize control of the sacred artifacts stored here and destabilize the entire region. Hinata, ever the silent observer, added in her soft voice, this isn't like the previous skirmishes. This is going to be a full-blown war. Naruto crossed his arms, his expression serious. Then we need to stop him once and for all. Rias nodded. Exactly. We can't let him get his hands on those artifacts, or the consequences will be disastrous. We'll need to work together to protect the city and defeat Azazel. Xenovia, standing beside Naruto, gripped her sword tightly. We'll take him down. This time, for good. Irina, ever the optimist, smiled softly. Together, we can do this. We've faced impossible odds before and we've always come out on top. Rossweisse, though quiet, nodded in agreement. We've grown stronger as a team. Azazel won't be able to stand against us. Rias looked around the room, her gaze passing over each member of her team. We'll split into groups to defend key points in the city. Naruto, you and your team will be on the front lines. Azazel knows how powerful you are and he'll likely come for you directly. Naruto nodded, his resolve firm. We're ready. The city was eerily quiet as the team made their way to their assigned positions. The streets were empty, the residents having been evacuated in preparation for the battle. Naruto, Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse stood at the main entrance to the city, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. This is it, Naruto said, his voice calm but filled with determination. This is where we make our stand. Xenovia placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression serious. No matter what happens, we fight together. Irina nodded, her eyes filled with trust. We've got each other's backs. Rossweisse, though visibly nervous, smiled. We'll protect the city. And each other. As they stood there, waiting for the battle to begin, Naruto couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the emotional turmoil, they had all come together. The bond they shared was unbreakable, and that gave him the strength to face whatever was coming. And then, they saw it. A dark cloud appeared on the horizon, growing larger with each passing second. The sound of beating wings filled the air as Azazel's army descended upon the city, their dark forms blotting out the sun. At the head of the swarm was Azazel himself, his wings spread wide, his eyes gleaming with malice. There he is, Naruto muttered, his fists clenching. Let's do this. With a roar, the fallen angels attacked, their dark magic lighting up the sky as they descended upon the city. Naruto, Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse sprang into action, each of them moving with precision and skill as they fought to hold the line. Naruto summoned his shadow clones, using them to engage multiple enemies at once. His Rasengan tore through the ranks of the fallen angels, sending them crashing to the ground. Beside him, Xenovia and Irina fought with a ferocity that could only come from their determination to protect what mattered most. Their swords gleamed with holy energy as they cut down enemy after enemy, their movements perfectly in sync. Rossweisse, standing slightly behind, unleashed a barrage of powerful magical attacks, her precision unmatched as she supported the team from a distance. Her barriers protected them from incoming attacks, and her offensive magic kept the fallen angels at bay. But even with their combined strength, the sheer number of enemies was overwhelming. For every fallen angel they defeated, it seemed like 2 more took its place. The sky was filled with dark wings and crackling magic, and the city was on the verge of being overrun. And then, Azazel himself descended, landing with a thunderous crash in the center of the battlefield. His dark aura radiated power, and the ground shook beneath his feet. "Naruto Uzumaki," Azazel called out, his voice echoing through the city. "I've been waiting for this moment. Your power, it belongs to me." Naruto stepped forward, his chakra flaring as he prepared for the final confrontation. "You're not taking anything from me, Azazel. This ends now." Azazel smirked, his wings spreading wide as he summoned a massive surge of dark energy. "We'll see about that." With a roar, Azazel unleashed a devastating blast of energy, aimed directly at Naruto. But Naruto was ready. With a swift movement, he formed a Rasengan, the spiraling ball of chakra glowing brightly in his hand. "Rasengan!" Naruto shouted, slamming the attack into Azazel's blast. The 2 forces collided, creating a massive explosion that rocked the entire city. But Naruto wasn't alone. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse rushed to his side, their combined strength bolstering his attack. Xenovia's holy sword glowed with a brilliant light as she struck at Azazel, while Irina's blade cut through the dark magic with precision. Rossweisse unleashed a powerful magical blast, her energy merging with Naruto's Rasengan. The combined force of their attacks overwhelmed Azazel, sending him crashing to the ground. For a moment, everything was still. But Azazel wasn't finished yet. He struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth, his eyes blazing with rage. "You think this is over?" he snarled. "I'm not done yet." Naruto, breathing heavily but filled with determination, stepped forward. "Yeah, it is. You're done, Azazel." With one final surge of chakra, Naruto charged at Azazel, his Rasengan glowing with the power of his friends. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse stood beside him, their energy fueling his attack. "Take this!" Naruto shouted, slamming the Rasengan into Azazel with all his might. The impact was devastating. Azazel let out a roar of pain as the attack hit him squarely, his body consumed by the spiraling energy. And then, with a blinding flash of light, he was gone. The battlefield fell silent. The fallen angels, seeing their leader defeated, retreated into the sky, disappearing as swiftly as they had come. The city was saved. Naruto stood in the center of the battlefield, breathing heavily but victorious. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse gathered around him, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. "You did it," Irina said, smiling despite her fatigue. "We all did it," Naruto replied, his voice filled with pride. "Together." Xenovia placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with admiration. "You were amazing, Naruto." Rossweisse, blushing slightly, nodded. "We couldn't have done it without you." Naruto smiled, looking at his friends. They had faced impossible odds and come out on top not because of any one person's strength, but because of the bond they shared. As the sun began to rise over the city, Naruto knew that they had won. The battle was over, but their journey was far from finished. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The morning sun bathed the city in a soft golden glow, a stark contrast to the chaos and destruction left behind by the battle. The once pristine streets were littered with debris, and the air was heavy with the scent of burnt magic. But despite the devastation, the city stood victorious. Azazel had been defeated, and his fallen angel army had been driven away. Naruto stood in the middle of the battlefield, his body still buzzing with the residual effects of the intense battle. Every muscle ached, and his chakra reserves were nearly depleted, but none of that mattered. They had won. The city was safe, and Azazel's dark ambitions had been crushed. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse stood by his side, each of them showing signs of wear from the battle, but alive and victorious. Their shared glances spoke volumes, the relief, the pride, and the unspoken bond that had formed through their struggles. "We did it," Xenovia said, sheathing her sword with a deep breath. "Azazel is finally gone." Irina smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off." Rossweisse, though normally quiet, looked at the team and nodded, her expression one of quiet satisfaction. "It was because we worked together. That's how we won." Naruto smiled softly at his friends. He couldn't have done this without them. Their strength, their trust, and their unwavering determination had been the key to defeating Azazel. But despite the victory, something felt off. A lingering unease that gnawed at the edges of Naruto's mind. Just as he was about to say something, a faint dark energy pulsed through the air, making everyone freeze in place. It was subtle at first, like the dying embers of a fire, but it grew stronger with every passing second. "Wait, do you feel that?" Naruto asked, his senses going on high alert. Xenovia's eyes widened in recognition. It's Azazel's energy. Irina clenched her fists. But we defeated him. How is this possible? Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them rumbled and a massive shockwave of dark energy erupted from the center of the battlefield. In an instant, Azazel reappeared, his body battered and broken, but still radiating an overwhelming aura of darkness. His eyes burned with rage, and his wings were tattered but still strong. I told you, Azazel growled, his voice dripping with malice. This isn't over. You will not defeat me so easily. Naruto's heart sank. He had used almost all of his chakra in the final attack, and his team was just as drained. They had given everything they had to defeat Azazel, but somehow, he was still standing. How is he still alive? Xenovia muttered, her hand instinctively reaching for her sword, though she knew she had little strength left to fight. Naruto gritted his teeth, trying to summon what little chakra he had left. We'll finish this even if it takes everything. But before they could act, Azazel raised his hand, summoning a powerful orb of dark energy. The force of it sent shockwaves through the air, and Naruto knew that if it hit them, there would be no surviving it. I won't be defeated by mere children. Azazel roared, preparing to unleash the attack. Time seemed to slow down. Naruto looked at his friends Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse, their faces etched with determination, but also the grim realization that they might not be able to stop this final attack. In that moment, Naruto made a decision. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, gathering every last ounce of his chakra into his hands. The familiar swirling energy of the Rasengan began to form, but this time, it was different. It was infused with the essence of Kurama, the Nine Tails, and the power of the bonds he had formed with his friends. Naruto, no. Xenovia shouted, realizing what he was about to do. Don't. Irina cried, reaching out to stop him. But Naruto didn't stop. He knew what needed to be done. He had always been the one to protect those he cared about, and this time would be no different. I'm not letting you hurt my friends. Naruto shouted, charging directly at Azazel. Azazel's eyes widened in surprise as Naruto rushed toward him, the Rasengan glowing with the combined power of his chakra and the strength of his friendships. In the last moment, Naruto slammed the Rasengan into Azazel's dark orb of energy. The two forces collided, creating an explosion of light and darkness that engulfed the entire battlefield. The shockwave was so powerful that it knocked Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse back, sending them tumbling to the ground. For a moment, everything was silent. As the dust began to settle, Xenovia struggled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. Naruto. Irina, tears streaming down her face, stood up beside her. Naruto he. Rossweisse, her hands trembling, scanned the battlefield, her eyes wide with shock. Where is he? And then they saw him. In the center of the battlefield, Naruto stood, his body battered and bruised, but still standing. Azazel, on the other hand, lay motionless on the ground, his dark energy completely extinguished. Naruto had done it. He had sacrificed everything to defeat Azazel, and in the end, he had won. But as Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse rushed to his side, they saw that Naruto was barely holding on. His chakra was completely depleted and he swayed on his feet, his vision blurry. Naruto. Xenovia cried, catching him as he began to collapse. Irina knelt beside him, her voice trembling. You idiot, why did you do that? Rossweisse, tears in her eyes, placed a hand on his arm. You saved us, but at what cost? Naruto smiled weakly, looking up at his friends. I couldn't let him hurt you. You're all too important to me. Xenovia shook her head, her voice breaking. We would have fought together. You didn't have to do this alone. Naruto's smile didn't fade, even as his strength began to leave him. I'm not alone. I never was. For a moment, the three girls were silent, their emotions too overwhelming to put into words. They had won, but the cost had been high. As Naruto's consciousness began to slip, he felt the warmth of their hands, their presence comforting him. He had fought for them, and in the end, that was all that mattered. But just before everything went dark, a soft voice echoed in Naruto's mind. Kurama, the Nine Tails, spoke in a tone that was both annoyed and affectionate. You idiot. You're not dying here. I won't let you. And with that, Naruto's body began to glow with the familiar orange chakra of the Nine Tails, the healing energy slowly restoring his strength. His wounds began to close, and the fatigue that had consumed him began to fade. Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse stared in disbelief as Naruto's condition began to improve, his body recovering before their eyes. Is he going to be okay? Irina whispered, her voice filled with hope. Rossweisse nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. He's healing. Naruto, feeling his strength returning, opened his eyes and grinned. Guess I'm not going anywhere after all. Xenovia let out a shaky laugh, her eyes glistening with tears. You really are something, Naruto. Irina smiled, her heart full of relief. You scared us. Rossweisse wiped her tears, her voice soft. Thank you, Naruto. As the sun rose over the battlefield, Naruto stood with his friends, victorious and alive. They had survived, and together, they had defeated Azazel. The battle was over, but the bonds they had forged through it all would remain forever. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the battlefield. The remnants of the fallen angel army had long since disappeared, and the city, though battered, was beginning to return to a semblance of peace. The air, once thick with the tension of war, now carried the soft murmur of rebuilding and recovery. Naruto stood on the outskirts of the city with Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse by his side. The battle was over, and Azazel was gone for good. They had won, but the victory had come at a great cost. Still, the team's spirits were high, bolstered by the knowledge that they had protected what mattered most. Naruto stretched his arms, feeling the strength return to his body after Kurama's healing. "Man, I'm hungry," he said, breaking the silence with his usual carefree grin. Xenovia smirked, crossing her arms. "After what you just pulled. You've earned a meal. Or several." Irina chuckled, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. "You scared us, Naruto. For a moment there, I thought we were going to lose you." Rossweisse smiled softly, her eyes still carrying the weight of everything they had gone through. "But you came back. Like always." Naruto scratched the back of his head, a slight blush creeping onto his face. "Well, I couldn't just leave you guys hanging, right?" The three girls exchanged glances, their expressions softening. Over the past few weeks, they had fought together, grown closer, and developed a deep bond that transcended mere friendship. Each of them had come to care for Naruto in their own way, and now, as the dust settled, the complicated emotions they had all been grappling with came to the surface once again. Xenovia, never one to mince words, stepped forward. "Naruto, now that the battle is over, we still have something we need to resolve." Naruto blinked, his confusion clear. "Resolve?" Irina sighed, though her smile was warm. "You know what we mean. We haven't forgotten about what we told you." Rossweisse, though still shy, nodded in agreement. "We've all confessed our feelings for you, Naruto. And now that things have calmed down we need to talk about it." Naruto's heart skipped a beat. He had known this conversation was coming, but with everything that had happened, he hadn't had time to fully process his own feelings. He cared deeply for all three of them: Xenovia, with her fierce determination, Irina, with her unwavering optimism, and Rossweisse, with her quiet strength. Each of them had become important to him in ways he hadn't expected. But choosing? That was a different story. Naruto was many things: a fighter, a protector, a loyal friend, but when it came to matters of the heart, he wasn't exactly an expert. I don't want to hurt any of you," Naruto began, his voice laced with sincerity. "You've all been so important to me. We've been through a lot together, and I care about each of you." Xenovia, always the straightforward one, gave him a small smile. "We know, Naruto. But we also know that you can't choose all of us." Irina, though her heart clearly ached, nodded in agreement. "We understand. Whatever you decide, we'll still be here for you." Rossweisse, ever the gentle soul, smiled through her nervousness. "We won't hold it against you. We just want you to be happy." Naruto felt a lump forming in his throat. How was he supposed to choose between them? They had each shown him such loyalty, such affection. The idea of hurting any of them made his heart ache. But they deserved an answer, and, after everything they had been through, they deserved honesty. He took a deep breath, his hands clenching into fists as he gathered his courage. I've been thinking a lot about this," Naruto said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're all incredible. Xenovia, you're strong, fearless, and you never back down from a fight. Irina, you've got this light about you, always finding hope even when things seem impossible. And Rossweisse, you're one of the kindest, most thoughtful people I've ever met. You've helped me believe in myself, just like I tried to do for you." The girls listened intently, their emotions clear on their faces as Naruto spoke. But Naruto hesitated, feeling the weight of his words. "I don't think I can choose just one of you. I've been thinking a lot about the bonds we've formed, and I've realized that I love all of you in different ways. But I don't want to hurt any of you by trying to pick." For a moment, there was silence. Xenovia, Irina, and Rossweisse exchanged glances, each of them processing Naruto's words. Finally, Xenovia let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "You really are something, Naruto. You've always been the guy who brings people together, not divides them." Irina smiled softly, her heart full. "You've always been like that. It's why we all care about you." Rossweisse, though still shy, nodded in agreement. "We don't want you to choose if it means losing any part of what we have. We can find a way forward together." Naruto looked at them, his heart swelling with relief and gratitude. "You mean you're okay with this?" Xenovia smirked, crossing her arms. "As long as you can keep up with us." Irina chuckled. "You'll have your hands full, that's for sure." Rossweisse smiled softly. "But we'll make it work." Naruto felt a wave of warmth wash over him. He hadn't expected this outcome, but it was the best one he could have hoped for. He had always been someone who thrived on the strength of his bonds, and now, he had 3 incredible women who cared for him and wanted to share their lives with him together. As the sun continued to rise, casting a golden glow over the city, Naruto felt a sense of peace settle over him. The battles were over, the threats had been defeated, and now, a new journey was beginning. One filled with love, friendship, and the promise of new adventures. He grinned at Xenovia, Irina and Rossweisse, his heart full. Guess we've got a lot to look forward to, huh? Xenovia smirked. Yeah. And I'll be counting on you to keep things interesting. Irina smiled brightly. There's never a dull moment with you, Naruto. Rossweisse, her cheeks pink but her eyes shining, nodded. Together, we'll make it through anything. As the 4 of them stood there, bathed in the light of a new day, Naruto knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team, as friends, and as something more. And with that, their journey together truly began. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.